That's bullshit. I'm dead. That was bullshit. Because he was open, I hit him, and then he attacked right through my attack, which is stupid. I was blocking. I dodged. Whatever. Oh, I can't get away. Tried to block. I tried to dodge. What the fuck?
Hello everybody, today we're going to talk about advanced mechanics in Ken's Rage. So the first thing I want to say is everybody has pretty much the same basic tool set, and then unique characters have unique mechanics. We talked about some of those in the last video. Kenshiro has access to Hokuto Shinken effects, which is basically a debuff you put on the enemy, and then you can stack Hokuto Shinken effects with the use of skills, and some of these skills are extremely powerful. The most powerful one I know of makes it so that enemies who are affected by Hokuto Shinken can't block, which is game-breakingly powerful on most bosses. It is extremely strong. So the basic tools everybody has a block button. When you press the block button, it's like when you're attacking a commander and they have a guard meter. You get a little guard meter, and enemies can break that the same way that you can break it on a commander. The guard is not especially powerful, and it takes a little bit of time to activate. It's something I use now and then, but I have other things I prefer to do. If you're playing as Kenshiro or Rei, I really recommend that their unique dodge button is the way to go when an enemy is attacking you. Don't even bother blocking, just get your dodge timings down, because the dodge button for Kenshiro and Rei has quite a few more iframes than any of their other options. And a lot of boss attacks are, if not unblockable, then they will break your block in, 1 or 2 hits. And then they will combo you. In addition to blocking, every character can jump. This seems like a really basic mechanic, but what you may not realize is this game has a lot of, I don't know what you call it exactly, a lot of negative frames. When you're done attacking or when you've completed a combo. When you complete a combo, you're usually left in minus frames, and most combos that you do are not guaranteed, to use the fighting game term. So what does it mean when a combo is not guaranteed? That means that if you hit an enemy with it, you open them up, you start hitting them, and they can start blocking. After a couple of hits, your combo will drop and they'll start blocking. Most of your combos are not guaranteed. There are a couple that are. For every character, your light combo, which is square or X, depending on the game controller you're using, it's the light attack. Your light combo is a true combo. All the hits are guaranteed if you open them up, which is why your light combo, since it's also your longest combo in most cases, and it's also your fastest because the hits are guaranteed on a normal hit, that is usually the one you want to go for against bosses, but I really don't use it outside of that ever because it's just too long. You'll end up getting hit in the back. Okay, so moving on, what makes the jump important? You can jump cancel. That's pretty much it. Because most of your hits are not guaranteed, because some of your combos have some slower animations depending on which ones you use, you can jump cancel. Every character can jump cancel. This is not something I would consider necessary to beat the game. I didn't even really start using it regularly until recently, but it is important to know every character can cancel out of animations by jumping. The problem with this is you don't really have very many iframes on your jump. This isn't one of those jumps that leaves you invincible. A lot of attacks can still hit you and combo you in the air, and when you land, you have some recovery frames on your landing. So it's not even close to a 100% way to get out of damage, but it can help for certain characters that are really slow. So for characters like Jaggy, he really has no good evasive options at all. He can burn meter or he can jump. Those are his two options. Likewise, burning meter, every character has a musou attack button That's a circle button. The way the musou system works in this game is every special technique takes however much it takes. It tells you on the thing when you select it. You can take up to 4 special techniques into a mission, and you can switch between them on the fly. So generally you'll have a special technique that's good against crowds, and another special technique that's good against bosses, and then, 2 others of your choice. Just to give an example, with Kenshiro, the 100 Cracked Fist that you start with is actually much better than I initially thought it was, so you might keep that. And then in addition to that one, you would have the Heavenly Destruction as your area effect attack. It's a very late game skill, does a lot of damage to enemies around you, takes care of groups. And then maybe you would have the Musou Tensei, which makes you invincible for, I think, 30 seconds. And then something else of your choice. That's just a hypothetical layout of musou attacks. Every character generally has strengths and weaknesses and unique traits and unique mechanics. This extends to the musou attacks, but I'm not going to go over every single musou attack that every character has and what it's good for. Rest assured, there is plenty of depth in the musou attacks. You're not going to just spam one musou attack unless you're really bad at the game, I guess, and then maybe if you play it on easy, you could do that. Let's talk about how to build meter in this game. So there are a lot of ways to build meter. I think Playable Passion's Stolen Audio might have talked about this. When enemies hit walls or physics objects, that builds meter really quickly for you. The meter are the little pips below your health bar, of course. It also builds a lot of meter really fast if you're playing as Kenshiro, for example, if you grab a guy and run with him into a bunch of his buddies, they'll all topple like dominoes. Basically, anytime you get a physics domino effect happening on a bunch of different enemies, that will build you a ton of meter. Do a running attack into a crowd of enemies. It usually has really strong knockback, and it'll create a domino effect and get you a lot of meter. That's just one way to do it. Since you can dash or jump cancel out of running attacks, that makes them a very safe way to build meter. I find a lot of these advanced techniques are not so necessary when you're just playing the game legend mode, normal. But when you start to get into dream mode, where maybe your character's not optimized for fighting massive mobs, or maybe your character's not optimized for fighting bosses, you'll want to start thinking about things like jump canceling out of your combos if you're playing someone like Jaggy. So now that we've talked a little bit about musou attacks, what they are, how you equip them, what would you want to use a musou attack for? This is what I'm talking about when I say burn meter. So one thing to remember is you can always cancel any move into a musou attack. So this is why you want to burn meter, and this is why I usually hoard my musou meter until I start to need it, because you can get into situations where something unexpected happens, and in this game, in a Dynasty Warriors game, probably nothing too bad will happen. In a normal Dynasty Warriors game, a normal musou game, you'll take some damage, no big deal. But in this game, you can get comboed really hard and take a lot of damage really quickly, especially later in the game. So you want to leave yourself an out, and the easiest way to do that, if you're not playing as Ken and you're not playing as Rei, or even if you are, you may want to do this anyway, is to burn meter, use a musou attack. You can cancel anything that's happening pretty much on the screen into your musou attack. So a lot of times, even if you're being comboed, if you're not in the air yet, you can hit a musou attack and you'll escape out. If you run up towards a boss and they activate one of their musou attacks, which you'll learn to recognize the signs of that. If you run up to a boss and they do a musou attack, then you can do one. And a lot of times what will happen is both animations will play out, theirs and yours. Whichever one is longest will usually win. If they're about the same length, they'll usually go past each other. Most of the time, they'll go past each other. So just think of it, even though it's a little bit janky looking, think of it as you're spending a bar to keep yourself safe. This is important because most moves in this game are not safe. The degree of unsafeness depends on the character you're playing as. I would say Rei is the least unsafe character, and therefore probably the best one, at least meterless. And then the most unsafe would be a character like Mamiya or Jaggy, who has no evasive technique and has to rely totally on burning meter. I guess Toki as well, who has to rely totally on burning meter to get out of trouble, or jump canceling. That's kind of it. Since we're talking about bosses, let's talk a little bit about boss behavior and what makes a boss fight maybe difficult or less difficult. Keep in mind that pretty much every ability you have, the bosses have, and vice versa. So for example, a boss can juggle you and take away half of your health bar, but you can usually do the same thing to them if you can figure out how to do it. I mentioned in a comment that if you grab an enemy as Kenshiro and run them into the boss, if you're able to deplete the boss's shield gauge, they will take a ridiculous amount of damage from just running into them repeatedly with enemies held by Kenshiro. So a lot of people who started playing this game had difficulty, they thought it was unfair. I think one of the major bosses that gave people trouble was Sheen. I know it was for me. Sheen is the first real boss. The next one after that is probably Mamiya, depending on who you play as. Sheen can be very challenging. He comes right after a fight with Heart, and in a pretty long stage, so it's kind of an endurance run to get to him, and then you fight this boss that has 3 forms. They give you a few healing items, but not too many, and if you don't know how the fight's going to go, it has 3 distinct stages. Again, more like a traditional beat-em-up game than a Dynasty Warriors game. I typically think of musou games where the bosses will just walk up to you and they'll spam musou attacks, or they'll do nothing and just get their ass beat. But Sheen is very different. Jaggy's another one people have trouble with. I think people just don't recognize maybe the signs of how these fights are supposed to look, what behaviors the boss is doing. So typically bosses have a fairly elaborate AI, I would guess. What they tend to do depends on what stage of the fight you're in and what level you're in when you are fighting them. The first early encounters with Rao, for example, he doesn't have his full AI yet, so he doesn't do the things he does later that make him so difficult. A lot of the earlier bosses or early stages of boss fights, they'll just kind of try to run up and punch you. If you just run up and punch them, you will be faster in most cases and you'll get a combo going on them and they won't be any problem. But I think people have trouble a little later in the fights. Bosses do have access to rage mode and they do have access to musou attacks, and these things can be pretty devastating for people who don't know what is happening. Bosses tend to react most strongly when they're not currently engaged in doing anything and you just run up to them, or when you just knock them over for a hard knockdown and they get up. After a hard knockdown, bosses tend to go into their rage mode more and they tend to use their musou attacks more. So any combo you do that leaves the boss at a hard knockdown state, you should be prepared that when they jump up, they're going to do one of those 2 things, or they might do some other kind of special gimmick move. I've talked a little bit about bosses going into rage mode. This is a mechanic you have as well. You can press the left trigger, or I think it's L2, and Ken will go into rage mode. It's important to note, when you go into rage mode, this starts a timer, sort of like any other musou game. At the end of it, all of your musou will be gone. So you need to space out your rage mode. When you have full musou, full meter, you do not want to use rage mode because it will burn all of it and you will get no benefit. If you have 1 bar of musou or if you have 50, it makes no difference really. I'm not aware of any difference. So you really want to make sure you've used a couple of your signature moves before you go to rage mode. Some bosses, when they enter rage mode, will tend to stay in rage mode if it's the last third of their life bar. Enemies in rage mode basically have super armor and higher priority attacks. This is true for you and true for them. I'm not aware of any bosses blocking my attacks when I'm in rage mode. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it seems like every time I activate rage mode, I never ever have enemies or bosses block my attacks. There are a few ways to deal with boss rage modes. One of them obviously is to activate your own rage mode. Another one is just to run away and let it wear off. This can be very dangerous if the boss has especially strong ranged attacks. Some of them do. I would recommend, for example, Jaggy, Sheen, and Rao you should never run away from, because they will just spam fireballs at you, and the fireballs in this game are very difficult to dodge, even with characters who have a dodge button. Some fireballs you can just block, but some are unblockable. I know for a fact one of Rao's is unblockable because I have tried to block it many times. So with all that said, what's kind of your basic strategy for fighting bosses? Because bosses are the real challenge in this game. Fighting enemies is a separate skill set, but it's not too difficult. Every character has their crowd control moves, and you just kind of apply those, and you use physics objects, and you use explosive barrels and weapons. Just make sure you use all the tools you have. If you have no meter, be extra careful about launching attacks, doing combos, because those are when you're at your most vulnerable, is when you're standing still and punching something or kicking something. That's when enemies will tend to jump all over you. It's not that they never attack before then, but when they attack you won't notice it because you'll be moving around. A lot of enemies will jump at your last known position, but if you're just constantly moving, they'll never hit you. It's when you stop to punch things that they really start to dogpile on top of you. And you never want to get surrounded for that reason as well, because then you'll be in a situation on wake up, basically, again, using fighting game terms. You'll be waking up, and they'll be spamming, they'll be jumping, they'll be trying to stun lock you. You can get out of it, it's not impossible. This isn't unfair or cheap or anything. It's just more challenging. It's a more difficult situation, so you just want to avoid that. So for bosses, the basic strategy I use is I try to avoid knocking them down unless I can knock them against a wall. Bosses take a lot of extra damage from walls and physics objects, basically the same as enemies do, so you want to hit them into a wall if you can, or knock them against something. What move you can do this with really depends on your character. If you don't have a move that you can do this with, then what I would recommend is to actually not knock them down, and to try to just reset them with another standard combo. So basically what this would look like is with Kenshiro, for example, I would do square, 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 and then I would jump or dodge roll, and then I would try square, 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 square again, and then I would dodge roll, and then I would do square, 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 and then maybe I would do circle and activate my musou and do 100 cracked fist, and angle the 100 cracked fist so that it knocks them into the wall and does extra damage. And every boss, like every character, has unique mechanics. Those are unique to the boss fight. These unique mechanics do not usually show up in Dream mode. They do show up in Legend mode. So Jaggy can call down cages in Legend mode, but that's because he has a special arena in Legend mode. In Legend mode, the boss fights are set up like proper boss fights with multiple stages. In Dream mode, it's much more like a Dynasty Warriors game. I think Dream mode was Tecmo Koei's attempt to appease hardcore Dynasty Warriors fanatics who did not necessarily want to play this newfangled beat 'em up, but I think looking at professional reviews and looking at people's opinions of the game, their attempt to make both parties happy really didn't turn out well for anyone. So another important aspect of bosses is how to open them up. We've talked a little bit about maybe what kind of combo you would use when you open them up, something that smashes them against a wall, or something that allows you to reset them. Keep in mind, again, that certain combos are not guaranteed. This is where people are having problems. This is where Jim Sterling is having problems. He is talking about enemies being able to hit him in the middle of his combo, or one of those reviews I read was talking about enemies being able to hit him in the middle of his combo. It's because he's doing combos that are not guaranteed. He's doing, square, square, triangle or something with Ken, and it's not guaranteed. And so on the big wind up for the triangle attack, the enemy is punching him in the face. I mean, it's something like that's happening. So you want to keep in mind that certain combos are not guaranteed, but this game does have counter hits in it. I'm not sure exactly what the effect is of a counter hit, but the camera does slow down for a counter hit to make you see that yes, you did get one. When you smash an enemy on a counter hit, it does a lot of damage. I mean, the way I'm describing it maybe makes it sound like you should only use the square combo, only use the X combo if you're playing on Xbox. But really, the combo you use depends on your distancing as well. A lot of times those delayed combos are much more powerful, and if you can get the enemy to kind of run at you, if you can get the boss to run at you rather than turtle, then they'll be trying to do a move and you'll hit them with your move and, wall splat them, and that's when you can really get some good damage, some good positioning. Keep in mind also, this is a subtlety of the game engine. Blocking, you can only block from the front, and also bosses can only block from the front. If you get behind a boss, you can just wail on them with your longest combo, your highest damage combo. Even if it's not guaranteed, they usually can't turn around in time. Most of them don't have a quick escape of any sort. You can just wail on them if you get behind them. So a lot of times after a hard knockdown, I will run and position myself behind the boss so that when they step up, if they're not fast enough turning around, I get a free combo on them. So let's talk about some more safer options against, what are your safest options against bosses. Depending on the character, you can run up and just start punching them. The boss will obviously block 99% of the time. When you run up to a boss and you start punching them, their first reaction will usually be to block everything, which is totally fine. This is kind of what you want to have happen. I mean, ideally you want a free combo, but you're usually not going to get one. So you run up and you start punching them. If you have fast enough punches to do this, if you don't, you'll do something else. But you run up and you start punching them, and then they block it, and then you have to wait and see what happens, basically. So there's a few things that will happen. Most typically, I find the boss is going to block a few hits, and then they're going to try to sneak in a sneaky little fast counter hit to open you up so that they can combo you. This is really pretty intelligent AI, I think. They're pretty clever about it. Again, I think people reviewing the game felt this was unfair, but they're just doing what they should do. They're watching for an opening, and when you go for something that's not safe, they're going to punch you out of it and try to combo you. So they're going to try to do that. So keeping that in mind, a lot of times what you can do is you can just continue a safe offensive. Just continue that guaranteed square string. With most characters it's guaranteed, again, not all, but most. You can just continue that safe string. Also, some characters have other strings that, as far as I know, are guaranteed, but I'm not sure what they all are. I'm pretty sure Mommy is square, triangle, triangle is guaranteed, but I'm not sure because I haven't played her enough. Anyway, so you can continue your offensive. They will keep blocking. They'll look for an opening and try to punish. Now, a lot of times what will happen, they'll try to punish, even though you're still doing a safe string. So they will try to sneak a hit in, and that means they'll open their block and they'll take part of your combo. Once that happens, you've opened them up. Congratulations. You can continue beating on them. It's important to remember that the last hit of your square combo usually knocks the enemy away or up. A lot of times what I see people doing in long plays and let's plays of this game, which is a good idea, is for your last hit of your combo, just hit the musou button instead, burn a bar, deal more damage, get a wall splat, get better positioning. The only reason not to do this is if you don't want to burn a bar. And I totally understand if somebody doesn't want to, because those little pips under your life bar, your meter is what keeps you safe from really big damage. Your health bar can get depleted super fast. It's your musou meter that's going to keep you safe when you're starting to take a real offensive. I mean, that's your most brainless option. You have other options, but that's your panic button. Alright, well, I've been talking for a bit. Let's take a break, and I'll come back and talk about some character-specific mechanics. We've talked about basic character advanced mechanics such as jump canceling. Also, make sure when you jump cancel that you do not leave your back to the boss when you're fighting a boss, or that will not be good for you. So we talked about jump canceling, we talked about your musou attack. When you're being attacked, you can always smash musou, and you'll go invincible for the duration of your musou attack, and that will get you out of being comboed to death. We talked about some boss stuff. So I'm going to take a break from this, and we will come back and talk about character-specific stuff. So see you later, folks.
やはりせっかくこうついた後がせっかくこうつけば一瞬のみ合力を得ることができる。しかしそれは同時に己の命さえ奪う非常の飛行。
徐々に弱れゆくお前の剣では俺は倒せぬ。それを見抜かれていることを知りながらお前はなぜ泣くラオウ。涙をその剛健と野望に変えたあなたが、お前の心、死を覚悟してなおかつまだこのラオウを目指そうとした悲しき心が、この俺の枯れた涙を呼び戻した。もはや悔いはない。宿命の幕を閉
ちよ。
さらば我が生涯最強の敵、さらば我が最愛の弟、これが貴様が目指した兄ラオウの剣